6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hey everybody, can you hear me? Hopefully. How's it going? Sorry, I need to fix something really quickly. Sorry about that. How's your Thursday? Thanks for being here. I appreciate it. Welcome back for part 5, which I just had a paranoid thought that I had changed the wrong number when I titled this. Hopefully we don't have to end mid-part. I see Dom's telling stories in the chat. You guys excited to see what's about to happen? Maybe we'll actually have a bit more action now. Really, the only thing I remember from the last stream was like the end, the exciting part, because the rest of it was not like at all. More filler. I'm not a filler fan. But let's say hi to y'all. I appreciate all of you being here. What's up, Legatus? Always first. Sometimes maybe not, I guess. How's it going? I don't know about the very afraid or even the afraid bit, but we'll see. Yeah, thanks for watching me over the DNC. I feel the love. Thanks, Dom. Welcome. Glad you're here. One day that was one. Right. Good Lord. And if anybody's curious, you can read through the recap that Dom put in chat. Thank you for that. It's appreciated, minus the stories that you're telling, like me and the blanket was a demonstration of if it actually were going on. Thank you very much. It was not during the reading. Was last time really the Night John boy, the Waltons? Was that last week? I feel like they're all blurring together. Yeah, this story that you're telling, Dom. I was not very scared reading the part, and I did not hide under my blanket while I was reading it. Were this real life situation, it's very possible that that's what I would do. I'm not going to go confront the dang thing. Now, if it were able to come inside, I would probably confront it, but I'm not opening the door. Hey, Mud Crab. Did I manage to defeat the yellow-haired anti-base bitch in the game convention? Are you talking about what Adam Soldier Spirit shared? Wait, no. Oh, no. The game convention. The game convention. Sorry. There's so many different things. So I was just like, her hair was green too. I'm losing my mind. Don't mind me. I fell asleep yesterday when I was watching that Gronkin. It was able to put me back to sleep because nothing was going on for the longest time either. Welcome. Thanks for being here, Mud. Blue Court Devil. Hello. Thank you. I got some snacks to hold me over. I was getting hungry. Thank you. Listen, and this is the other story you're telling in chat, Dom. I am not a Swiftie, thank you very much. And I'm pretty sure you know that. Hail Kel, how's it going? Happy, joy, huh? Oh, I got double snacks. Well, that's more like quadruple snacks. Thank you. As some of you probably know, Marines are known for eating crayons. Known for eating them. Because we're more the brawn of the branches than the brains, for the most part. I have more brains than most, well, more than the average of Marines. What mug? Do you know what movie this one's from? Because I think was last week Harry Potter mug. My car is themed after this one mug. Thank you. I thought so. Okay. No, it's not hot cocoa. That is not on diet. You mean this blanket, Dom? My feet are cold. Yeah. I feel like that's all there is now. Cringe in gaming. Well, not all. Obviously, the success of Black Myth Wukong is not cringe. Not even the success, just the game itself. It doesn't seem to be. Maybe I'll play it at some point. Maybe. I've not played a Souls game before. Not that it is specifically Souls, but it's adjacent. Hey, Sam. Well, thank you for the like if you're still here. I appreciate it. Hope it's not too busy. Beige is too plain. Very little flavor. You would. It was a different time back then, too, though. We got to lean into it, us jarheads. Date everything game? Oh, I think Horror Amarada talked about that. She did a video a while back on that, if it's the same one, which I'm assuming it would be. Like your vacuum cleaner, your broom, like whatever, you can romance it. Maybe I'm thinking of a different one. Like maybe she talked about a different one, but I know there is one of that. I mean, you do you. If you're a consenting adult and leaving the kids alone, I really don't care. If it's a game for you, get it. You more local friends instead of internet friends. Dave Lando's performing this weekend, and I don't have anyone to go with. That would be awesome, and I feel the same way. I know of like 2 people in this area, and I am a hermit, but it would be nice to have people to hang out with. Also, I would have to like reach out to people, which I could do. Do I want to? My motivation levels. If Dave Landau came out here, I'd probably drag my brother with me. Or I might just go myself. Maybe I'll drag someone else out here of the like 2 people I know. You get magic glasses and you can romance your furniture. Yeah. The dev team were very excited about it. See, that's what's weird. I mean, if you enjoy what you do, you can probably find joy in anything, even if it's not your cup of tea, but I feel like that's a little different. It's kind of weird, a little bit. I don't understand it, but who am I to judge? I like weird things that I'm not discussing here. It was just of course it was. It's also the leaning into it. Field artillery, huh? It's amazing. Oh, that's great. I love it. Well, let's take a bit of a recap. I'm gonna scroll up and read through Dom's recap that he did for the first stuff because I don't remember it much. Yeah, I do remember them going to the nursery. It was interesting. They when they were first going in, there's like a draft in the doorway, but there's nothing really in the area that could make there be that kind of a breeze where it drops by that much. So they all kind of noted it and got a little creeped out by it. And then when you stand at the doorway, you can see like 2 mounted heads. Not mounted. Is it paintings maybe? Yeah, it was very weird and creepy. So like these 2 heads are watching, like when you stand in that spot that's really cold, like in the doorway, it looks like they're just watching you. Very weird. They have dinner. Oh, and the doctor did say he told Eleanor to leave and like run away as fast as she can if she ever feels that the house is like trying to attack her or is too much type of thing. And he told Theodora and Luke the same thing. And then they have their little John Boy, night John Boy moments. It was so silly. It's just not that it's silly to say goodnight to people. it felt weird to read it out because it was literally just the same words from different people. Let me see if I can find it because I don't even think there was like she said, he said, they said. Oh, wait, that's pronouns. Let's see. It was just weird. Maybe I'm getting more and more used to listening to my own voice, but it's still weird sometimes. Yeah. But it doesn't matter. Whatever. Whatever. I do what I want. Yeah. So they all say good night. And then Eleanor's having this dream where she thought that her mom was knocking on the door, screaming for her name. And she was like saying, I'm coming, mom, I'm coming. And then basically she wakes up and realizes her mom's not around and she's in Hill House. And the sound is still pounding. Theodora is the one that was calling for her. So she hurries over there, knocks a table over, and they sit there really freaked out because they hear someone down the hall banging on doors. And they at first kind of like comforted themselves by assuming that the doctor and Luke were down there already, so they don't need to panic. But then the knocking on every single door got closer and closer and closer until eventually it did start knocking on Theodora's door. And they realized that it was too high for even the doctor or Luke to be knocking. It was like a pounding sound. Yeah. The door's locked. They both like had a freak out moment right before it was on their door. Thinking, oh Lord, is Theodora's door locked? Is Eleanor's door locked? So they figured that out, and then the pounding starts happening. Yeah. And it was really loud bangs. And then they start to hear like laughing at them. Eleanor seems to be, honestly, I was a little bit impressed with how Eleanor handled it. She was kind of braver than I thought she would be because really, I honestly don't like her as a character. And she seems a little weak mentally. So she handled it pretty well, I think. I'm sure I'm definitely missing details, but that's not what a recap is for. They hear Luke and the doctor downstairs, and they like run up the stairs and the pounding stops, basically. And then they have a little discussion where Luke and the doctor had been distracted. They'd been woken up before the girls by a dog that was inside the house that they were trying to catch. And then it went outside, and then they went to like the garden trying to find the dog or dogs. There might have been multiple ones. After they told their little story, they came back inside when they gave up on the dog, and heard the girls upstairs. So after they told their little story, the doctor, I think it was, made the realization that he thinks the house is trying to separate them. So they have to be more cautious where essentially that they don't get separated. So, and that's kind of like where it left off. So creepy, kind of psychologically creepy, I think. But yeah, that's where we're at so far. I have theories that Dom doesn't like. If you go back on the stream last week, he had a comment and we had a little discussion. I don't want it to be the case, but I feel like it might be the case where maybe Eleanor is the only one there and everything's kind of made up in her head because she does have the proclivities, the predisposition. That's what I was meaning, to make up stories in her head when she sees something. Like she'll use something as a point of reference and then make up a whole story. like a fantasy about it. So like I'm wondering maybe back home she's not liking her life situation. Her mom passed away. She doesn't really like her sister and her husband, her brother-in-law, and her entire situation. So maybe she's like read an article about Hill House or something. Maybe something happened there. Something happened in the town. And so she just made up a story to make an excuse to go out there, and she's by herself, maybe? I don't know. I've never watched anything. I haven't read anything about it. I just feel like it's kind of potentially a story like that, which I'm not a big fan of. So we'll see. Oh, yeah. I vaguely remember that. They did talk some shit on the housekeeper. It's a good point. I don't believe so. I wasn't meaning that I'm the only one in the world, though. Yeah. But here I have been talking for 20 minutes to y'all. You're like not disembodied voices. You're not even voices at all. No bodies, no voices. Just words. One of the reasons I don't upload more stuff is actually not to do with the fact that I don't like my own voice, my recorded voice. It's actually, I don't know, like I have all these ideas in my head, but I need to figure out OBS, and life has been a little hectic to where I haven't like sat down and actually figured it out yet. So yeah, it's my own fault that I don't do anything. After like the first couple of videos that I did, I got past it. And like it does help. Like I do timestamps for Dermy and a couple of people on live streams that I've been on, to where like I'll not know the exact time, so I'll have to go back and find it to get the exact timestamps for things. So I got used to my voice with that, and I've gotten over it for the most part. But yeah. When I first read that, I'm like, braid my hair, and then I remembered, oh, I was twisting my hair. Yes, I do that sometimes. Sometimes I don't. I do it without realizing it. So thanks for pointing that out. She was hero worshiping Theodora, then makes the baby comment. Yeah. Meant it as an observation. It was a little weird, and I'm just wondering, like, maybe it's not back then when this book was written, maybe that wasn't as much of a insult to say something like that, but it did seem kind of out of place where it was weird. She definitely does need to get out more. I'm in part a social butterfly, which is also why I can't really stand Eleanor. Yes, it really is. Honestly, I feel like it's a cop-out. It's all in their head. Have you ever seen Secret Window? I enjoy that movie up until the end. Might just have to do with the fact that it's Johnny Depp, though. Yeah, I might look into the Netflix series. That'd be interesting if the house was a mental asylum. I guess we'll have to see. Well, just as I was going to mention it, I looked at it. Thank you, Dom, for the 27. See, isn't this number better than last week? This book is kind of, but still loving this book. Reading stream. Shout out to Legatus, Mudcrab, Sam, Kel, Blue Cord Devil, and all the other regulars and the lurkers too. Thank you, Dom. I appreciate it. That was Stream Elements. I do have it pinned in the comment at the top of chat. If anyone is inclined to send anything, you don't have to. There's absolutely no obligation. It's just there if you'd like to. And I appreciate anything. that anyone can send. And I appreciate all of you for sticking with me, for blabbering on for almost 30 minutes. Sometimes I don't know where the time goes, but I like to talk, I guess. On that note, let's get to reading for part 5, chapter 1. Like I said, part 5, chapter 1. Looking at herself in the mirror with the bright morning sunlight freshening even the blue room of Hill House, Eleanor thought, "It is my second morning in Hill House, and I am unbelievably happy. Journeys end in lovers' meeting. I have spent an all but sleepless night. I have told lies and made a fool of myself, and the very air tastes like wine. I have been frightened half out of my foolish wits, but I have somehow earned this joy. I have been waiting for it for so long, abandoning a lifelong belief that to name happiness is to dissipate it. She smiled at herself in the mirror and told herself silently, 'You are happy, Eleanor. You have finally been given a part of your measure of happiness.' Looking away from her own face in the mirror, she thought blindly, 'Journeys end in lovers' meeting.' Lovers' meeting. Luke?" It was Theodora calling outside in the hall. "You carried off one of my stockings last night, and you are a thieving cad, and I hope Mrs. Dudley can hear me." Eleanor could hear Luke faintly answering. He protested that a gentleman had a right to keep the favors bestowed upon him by a lady, and he was absolutely certain that Mrs. Dudley could hear every word. "Eleanor?" Now Theodora pounding on the connecting door. "Are you awake? May I come in?" "Come, of course," Eleanor said, looking at her own face in the mirror. "You deserve it," she told herself. "You have spent your life earning it." Theodora opened the door and said happily, "How pretty you look this morning, my Nell. This curious life agrees with you." Eleanor smiled at her. The life clearly agreed with Theodora, too. "We ought by rights to be walking around with dark circles under our eyes and a look of wild despair," Theodora said, putting an arm around Eleanor and looking into the mirror beside her. "And look at us, two blooming, fresh young lovelies." Oops. "I'm 34 years old," Eleanor said, and wondered what obscure defiance made her add 2 years. "And you look about 14, Theodora said. "Come along, we've earned our breakfast." Laughing, they raced down the great staircase and found their way through the game room and into the dining room. "Good morning," Luke said brightly. "And how did everyone sleep?" "Delightfully, thank you," Eleanor said, "like a baby." "There may have been a little noise," Theodora said, "but one has to expect that in these old houses. Doctor, what do we do this morning?" Said the doctor, looking up. He alone looked tired, but his eyes were lighted with the same brightness they found, all in one another. "It is excitement," Eleanor thought. "We are all enjoying ourselves." "Balachin House," the doctor said, savoring his words. "Borley Rectory. Glamis Castle. It is incredible to find oneself experiencing it. Absolutely incredible. I could not have believed it. I begin to understand dimly the remote delight of your true medium. I think I shall have the marmalade, if you would be so kind." "Thank you. My wife will never believe me. Food has a new flavor. Do you find it so?" "It isn't just that Mrs. Dudley has surpassed herself, then. I was wondering," Luke said. "I've been trying to remember," Eleanor said. "About last night, I mean. I can remember knowing that I was frightened, but I can't imagine actually being frightened." "I remember the cold," Theodora said and shivered. "I think it's because it was so unreal by any pattern of thought I'm used to. I mean, it just didn't make sense." Eleanor stopped and laughed, embarrassed. "I remember the—" Ooh, nope. I looked up and lost my place. Sorry, guys. "I agree," Luke said. "I found myself this morning telling myself what had happened last night. The reverse of a bad dream, as a matter of fact, where you keep telling yourself that it didn't really happen." "I thought it was exciting," Theodora said. The doctor lifted a warning finger. "It is still perfectly possible that it is all caused by subterranean waters. Then more houses ought to be built over secret springs, Theodora said. The doctor frowned. This excitement troubles me, he said. It is intoxicating, certainly, but might it not also be dangerous? An effect of the atmosphere of Hill House? The first sign that we have, as it were, fallen under a spell? Then I will be an enchanted princess, Theodora said. And yet, Luke said, if last night is a true measure of Hill House, we are not going to have much trouble. We were frightened, certainly, and found the experience unpleasant while it was going on, and yet I cannot remember that I felt in any physical danger. Even Theodora telling that whatever was outside her door was coming to eat her did not really sound. I know what she meant, Eleanor said, because I thought it was exactly the right word. The sense was that it wanted to consume us, take us into itself, make us a part of the house, maybe. Oh dear. I thought I knew what I was saying, but I'm doing it very badly. No physical danger exists, the doctor said positively. No ghost in all the long histories of ghosts has ever hurt anyone physically. The only damage done is by the victim to himself. One cannot even say that the ghost attacks the mind because the mind, the conscience, thinking mind, is invulnerable. In all our conscious minds, as we sit here talking, there is not one iota of belief in ghosts. Not one of us, even after last night, can say the word ghost without a little involuntary smile. No, the menace of the supernatural is that it attacks where modern minds are weakest, where we have abandoned our protective armor of superstition and have no substitute defense. Not one of us thinks rationally that what ran through the garden last night was a ghost, and what knocked on the door was a ghost, and yet there was certainly something going on in Hill House last night, and the mind's instinctive refuge, self-doubt, is eliminated. We cannot say it was my imagination because 3 other people were there too. I could say, Eleanor put in, smiling, all 3 of you are bleh. I could say, Eleanor put in, smiling, all 3 of you are in my imagination. None of this is real. If I thought you could really believe that, the doctor said gravely, I would turn you out of Hill House this morning. You would be venturing far too close to the state of mind which would welcome the perils of Hill House with a kind of sisterly embrace. He means he would think you were batty, Nell dear. Well, Eleanor said, I expect I would be. If I had to take sides with Hill House against the rest of you, I would expect you to send me away. Why me, she wondered. Why me? Am I the public conscience? Expected always to say in cold words what the rest of them are too arrogant to recognize? Am I supposed to be the weakest, weaker than Theodora? Of all of us, she thought, I am surely the one least likely to turn against the others. Poltergeists are another thing altogether, the doctor said, his eyes resting briefly on Eleanor. They deal entirely with the physical world. They throw stones, they move objects, they smash dishes. Mrs. Foister at Borley Rectory was a long-suffering woman, but she finally lost her temper entirely when her best teapot was hurled through the window. Poltergeists, however, are rock bottom on the supernatural social scale. They are destructive, but mindless and willless. They are merely undirected force. Do you recall, he asked with a little smile, Oscar Wilde's lovely story, The Canterville Ghost? The American twins who rotted the fine old English ghost. Routed. Rooted? You tell me, Theodora said. Exactly. I have always liked the notion that the American twins were actually a poltergeist phenomenon. Certainly poltergeists can overshadow any more interesting manifestation. Bad ghosts drive out good, and he patted his hands happily. They drive out everything else too, he added. There was a manor in Scotland infested with poltergeists, where as many as 17 spontaneous fires have broken out in one day. Poltergeists like to turn people out of bed violently by tipping the bed end over end. And I remember the case of a minister who was forced to leave his home because he was tormented day after day by a poltergeist who hurled at his head hymn books stolen from a rival church. Suddenly, without reason, laughter trembled inside Eleanor. She wanted to run to the head of the table and hug the doctor. She wanted to reel, chanting, across the stretches of the lawn. She wanted to sing and to shout and to fling her arms and move in great emphatic possessing circles around the rooms of Hill House. I am here, she thought. She shut her eyes quickly in delight and then said demurely to the doctor, "And what do we do today?" "You're still like a pack of children," the doctor said, smiling too. "Always asking me what to do today. Can't you amuse yourselves with your toys or with each other? I have work to do." "All I really want to do," and Theodora giggled, "is slide down that banister." The excited gaiety had caught her as it had Eleanor. "Hide and seek," Luke said. "Try not to wander around alone too much," the doctor said. "I can't think of a good reason why not, but it does seem sensible." "Because there are bears in the woods," Theodora said, "and tigers in the attic," Eleanor said, "and an old witch in the tower and a dragon in the drawing room." "I'm quite serious," the doctor said, laughing. "It's 10 o'clock. I clear—" "Good morning, Mrs. Dudley," the doctor said, and Eleanor and Theodora and Luke leaned back and laughed helplessly. "I clear at 10 o'clock. We won't keep you long. About 15 minutes, please, and then you can clear the table. I clear breakfast at 10 o'clock. I set on lunch at 1. Dinner I set on at 6. It's 10 o'clock. Mrs. Dudley, the doctor began sternly, and then, noticing Luke's face tight with silent laughter, lifted his napkin to cover his eyes and gave in. "You may clear the table, Mrs. Dudley," the doctor said brokenly. Happily, the sound of their laughter echoing along the halls of Hill House and carrying to the marble group in the drawing room and the nursery upstairs and the odd little top to the tower. They made their way down the passage to their parlor and fell, still laughing, into chairs. "We must not make fun of Mrs. Dudley," the doctor said, and leaned forward, his face in his hands and his shoulders shaking. They laughed for a long time, speaking now and then in half phrases, trying to tell one another something, pointing at one another wildly, and their laughter rocked Hill House until, weak and aching, they lay back, spent, and regarded one another. "Now," the doctor began, and was stopped by a little giggling burst from Theodora. "Now," the doctor said again, more severely, and they were quiet. "I want more coffee," he said, appealing. "Don't we all?" "You mean go right in there and ask Mrs. Dudley?" Eleanor asked. "Walk right up to her when it isn't 1 o'clock or 6 o'clock and just ask her for some coffee?" Theodora demanded. "Roughly, yes," the doctor said. "Luke, my boy, I have observed that you are already something of a favorite with Mrs. Dudley." "And how," Luke inquired with amazement, "did you ever manage to observe anything so unlikely? Mrs. Dudley regards me with the same particular loathing she gives a dish not properly on its shelf. In Mrs. Dudley's eyes, you are, after all, the heir to the house," the doctor said coaxingly. "Mrs. Dudley must feel for you as an old family retainer feels for the young master." "In Mrs. Dudley's eyes, I am something lower than a dropped fork. I beg of you, if you are contemplating asking the old fool for something, send Theo or our charming Nell. They are not afraid." "Nope," No. "Nope," Theodora said. "You can't send a helpless female to face down Mrs. Dudley. Nell and I are here to be protected, not to man the battlements for you cowards." "Nonsense," the doctor said heartily. "You certainly wouldn't think of asking me, an older man. Anyway, you know she adores you." "Insolent graybeard," Luke said, "sacrificing me for a cup of coffee. Do not be surprised, and I say it darkly, do not be surprised if you lose your Luke in this cause. Perhaps Mrs. Dudley has not yet had her own mid-morning snack, and she is perfectly capable of a filet de Luc à la Meunière. I can't speak French, so you can just assume it was something fancy. Or perhaps something else, depending upon her mood. Diapose? I don't know. Diapois? Friggin' French, man. If I do not return," and he shook his finger warningly under the doctor's nose, "I entreat you to regard your lunch with the gravest suspicion." Bowing extravagantly, as befitted one off to slay a giant, he closed the door behind him. "Lovely Luke," Theodora stretched luxuriously. "Lovely Hill House," Eleanor said. "Theo," There is a kind of little summer house in the side garden, all overgrown. I noticed it yesterday. Can we explore it this morning? Delighted, Theodora said. I would not like to leave 1 inch of Hill House uncherished. Anyway, it's too nice a day to stay inside. We'll ask Luke to come too, Eleanor said. And you, Doctor? My notes, the doctor began, and then stopped as the door opened so suddenly that in Eleanor's mind was only the thought that Luke had dared face Mrs. Dudley after all, but had stood waiting, pressed against the door. Then, looking at his white face and hearing the doctor say with fury, I broke my own first rule. I sent him alone. She found herself only asking urgently, Luke? Luke? It's all right, Luke even smiled, but come into the long hallway. Chilled by his face and his voice and his smile, they got up silently and followed him through the doorway into the dark, long hallway which led back to the front hall. Here, Luke said, and a little winding shiver of sickness went down Eleanor's back when she saw that he was holding a lighted match up to the wall. It's writing? Eleanor asked, pressing closer to see. Writing, Luke said. I didn't even notice it until I was coming back. Mrs. Dudley said no, he added, his voice tight. My flash. The doctor took his flashlight from his pocket, and under its light, as he moved slowly from one end of the hall to the other, the letters stood out clearly. Chalk, the doctor said, stepping forward to touch a letter with the tip of his finger, written in chalk. The writing was large and straggling and ought to have looked, Eleanor thought, as though it had been scribbled by bad boys on a fence. Instead, it was incredibly real, going in broken lines over the thick paneling of the hallway. From one end of the hallway to the other, the letters went, almost too large to read, even when she stood back against the opposite wall. Can you read it? Luke asked softly, and the doctor, moving his flashlight, read slowly. Help Eleanor come home. No, and Eleanor felt the words up in her throat. She had seen her name as the doctor read it. It is me, she thought. It is my name standing out there so clearly. I should not be on the walls of this house. Wipe it off, please, she said, and felt Theodora's arm go around her shoulders. It's crazy, Eleanor said, bewildered. Crazy is the word, all right, Theodora said strongly. Come back inside, Nell, and sit down. Luke will get something and wipe it off. But it's crazy, Eleanor said, hanging back to see her name on the wall. Why? Firmly, the doctor put her through the door into the little parlor and closed it. Luke had already attacked the message with his handkerchief. Now you listen to me, the doctor said to Eleanor. Just because your name... That's it, Eleanor said, staring at him. It knows my name, doesn't it? It knows my name. Shut up, will you? Theodora shook her violently. It could have said any of us. It knows all our names. Did you write it? Eleanor turned to Theodora. Please tell me. I won't be angry or anything, just so I can know that maybe it was only a joke to frighten me. She looked appealingly at the doctor. You know that none of us wrote it, the doctor said. Luke came in, wiping his hands on his handkerchief, and Eleanor turned hopefully. Luke, she said, you wrote it, didn't you, when you went out? Luke stared and then came to sit on the arm of her chair. Listen, he said, you want me to go writing your name everywhere, carving your initials on the trees, writing Eleanor, Eleanor on little scraps of paper? He gave her hair a soft little pull. I've got more sense, he said. Behave yourself. Then why me? Eleanor said, looking from one of them to another. I am outside, she thought madly. I am the one chosen, and she said quickly, beggingly, did I do something to attract attention more than anyone else? No more than usual, dear, Theodora said. She was standing by the fireplace, leaning on the mantel and tapping her fingers. And when she spoke, she looked at Eleanor with a bright smile. Maybe you wrote it yourself. Angry, Eleanor almost shouted. You think I want to see my name scribbled all over this foul house? You think I like the idea that I'm the center of attention? I'm not the spoiled baby, after all. I don't like being singled out. Asking for help, did you notice? Theodora said lightly. Perhaps the spirit of the poor little companion has found a means of communication at last. Maybe she was only waiting for some drab, timid... Maybe it was only addressed to me because no possible appeal for help could get through that iron selfishness of yours. Maybe I might have more sympathy and understanding in 1 minute than... And maybe, of course, you wrote it to yourself, Theodora said again. After the manner of men who see women quarreling, the doctor and Luke had withdrawn, standing tight together in miserable silence. Now, at last, Luke moved and spoke. That's enough, Eleanor, he said unbelievably, and Eleanor whirled around, stamping. How dare you, she said, gasping. How dare you? And the doctor laughed then, and she stared at him and then at Luke, who was smiling and watching her. What is wrong with me? She thought. Then, but they think Theodora did it on purpose, made me mad so I wouldn't be frightened. How shameful to be maneuvered that way. She covered her face and sat down in her chair. Nell, dear, Theodora said, I am sorry. I must say something, Eleanor told herself. I must show them that I am a good sport after all. A good sport. Let them think that I am ashamed of myself. I'm sorry, she said. I was frightened. Of course you were, the doctor said, and Eleanor thought, how simple he is, how transparent. He believes every silly thing he has ever heard. He thinks even that Theodora shocked me out of hysteria. She smiled at him and thought, now I am back in the fold. I really thought you were going to start shrieking, Theodora said, coming to kneel by Eleanor's chair. I would have in your place, but we can't afford to have you break up, you know. We can't afford to have anyone but Theodora in the center of the stage, Eleanor thought. If Eleanor was going to be the outsider, she was going to be it all alone. She reached out and patted Theodora's head and said, thanks. I guess I was kind of shaky for a minute. I wondered if you two were going to come to blows, Luke said, until I realized that what Theodora was doing. Smiling down into Theodora's bright, happy eyes, Eleanor thought, but that isn't what Theodora was doing at all. That was a long chapter. Or maybe it was just better than previous ones, so it seemed longer. I don't know. Uh-oh, did I just see a wild Mazza in chat? Gotta get back to my place. Yeah, I'm really getting tired of the journey ends in lovers meeting phrase. Hey, Clinton, how's it going? Welcome. Oh, I see. It was Mazza being Mazza. I'm not going to shut up because you tell me to. It was more I was thirsty. Wait, did we miss something about Luke and T? Did they? No. She was being sarcastic, and so was he. Like, their little banters back and forth, all of them. Nothing happened between the two of them. It was jokes. Modern houses are built over water, aka indoor plumbing, sewage drains. Does this mean they were predicting the future? Maybe. Did they not have plumbing back then? I don't know those things. I don't understand the reference. Who's the Freeling family? It's probably like a Rosemary's Baby or something, right? Or is that the Poltergeist movie? It's probably the glaringly obvious slap in my face that should be what that is. Yeah, I definitely adore catty women being catty. Because that's all I saw that little spat as. I don't know about anybody else, but seriously. And especially at the end when she's just like, but that wasn't what Theodora was doing. That is a good look into women's brains when it comes to other women, even if they're friends. It's ridiculous. Do guys think like that at all? Like, there's the cocky jerk, but he's still like your friend. Like, do you have negative thoughts like that about each other? Or do you just not care? Like, all right, whatever. He's him. Move on. Carry on. Why didn't they ask Mrs. Dudley, hey, are you closing the doors after we're leaving them open? She probably won't answer, though, and just say the same phrase she's been saying over and over. I'm pretty sure that's what the result would be, was her just repeating the same things over and over. No worries, Blue Cord. Have fun. Take care of yourself, man. I appreciate you being here for the first hour. I like how in this, I swear to God, Dom, soldier spirit, Legatus. I did not peek ahead. I have not read this. I have not watched anything to do with The Haunting of Hill House. But I do like in this chapter how they she actually brought up maybe it's all in her head and they're not real, like any of them. I feel like that could be foreshadowing that might be what's going on, which is super annoying. Not my favorite thing in the world. So we'll see. Sorry, I just need to pull something up real quick. Okay. Men establish a social order in groups. You either dominate, submit, or leave. It is normally only when the social group is forced to exist, like in school, that men bully each other. That's interesting. I mean, I saw that a lot in the military, I guess. Less so the leaving, because military is almost like school, just in a different way. It's actually more like prison, but yeah, there's always like the more dominant personality than the others kind of just fall in line behind them. So do you think it's a poltergeist or a ghost writing on the wall? Do you think it's Eleanor? I'm leaning towards Eleanor. I'm going to try to avoid having hiccups. I don't know how possible that is. There was. I like how they randomly have these nicknames for each other. This is the first time that's come up. And why is Nell Eleanor a nickname for Eleanor? Is it kind of like Dick for Richard? I do kind of like how in this chapter it went from they like got some more sleep and they were really energetic and laughing and happy. And I feel like it was kind of like a coping mechanism, really. But then almost immediately when they were done, but still kind of jovial, the house was just like, nope, fuck you. I'm going to scare you senseless again, type of thing. That was interesting, I feel. You don't think it was the ghost. Interesting. Male social interaction is basically a lot of chest beating. Yeah. We know at some level we can't fight each other without both getting hurt, so we follow the strongest rather than fighting mostly. Definitely, huh? It's a very definitive statement. Let's see if you're right, I guess. Part 5, Chapter 2. Time passed lazily at Hill House. Eleanor and Theodora, the doctor and Luke, alert against terror, wrapped around by the rich hills and securely set into the warm, dark luxuries of the house, were permitted a quiet day and a quiet night. Enough, perhaps, to dull them a little. They took their meals together, and Mrs. Dudley's cooking stayed perfect. They talked together and played chess. The doctor finished Pamela and began on Sir Charles Grandison. A compelling need for occasional privacy led them to spend some hours alone in their separate rooms without disturbance. Theodora and Eleanor and Luke explored the tangled thicket behind the house and found the little summer house, while the doctor was sat in the wide lawn, writing within sight and hearing. They found a walled-in rose garden grown over with weeds and a vegetable garden tenderly nourished by the Dudleys. They spoke often of arranging their picnic by the brook. There were wild strawberries near the summer house, and Theodora and Eleanor and Luke brought back a handkerchief full and lay on the lawn near the doctor eating them, staining their hands and their mouths. Like children, the doctor told them, looking up with amusement from his notes. Each of them had written, carelessly and with little attention to detail, an account of what they thought they had seen and heard so far in Hill House, and the doctor had put the papers away in his portfolio. The next morning, their third morning in Hill House, the doctor, aided by Luke, had spent a loving and maddening hour on the floor of the upstairs hall, trying with chalk and measuring tape to determine the precise dimensions of the cold spot, while Eleanor and Theodora sat cross-legged on the hall floor, noting down the doctor's measurements and playing tic-tac-toe. The doctor was considerably hampered in his work by the fact that, his hands repeatedly chilled by the extreme cold, he could not hold either the chalk or the tape for more than a minute at a time. Luke, inside the nursery doorway, could hold one end of the tape until his hand came into the cold spot, and then his fingers lost strength and relaxed helplessly. A thermometer dropped into the center of the cold spot refused to register any change at all, but continued doggedly maintaining that the temperature there was the same as the temperature down the rest of the hall, causing the doctor to fume wildly against the statisticians of Borley Rectory, who had caught an 11-degree drop. When he had defined the cold spot as well as he could, and noted his results in his notebook, he brought them downstairs for lunch and issued a general challenge to them to meet them at croquet in the cool of the afternoon. It seems foolish, he explained, to spend a morning as glorious as this has been looking at a frigid place on a floor. We must plan to spend more time outside, and was mildly surprised when they laughed. Is there still a world somewhere? Eleanor asked wonderingly. Mrs. Dudley had made them a peach shortcake, and she looked down at her plate and said, I'm sure Mrs. Dudley goes somewhere else at night, and she brings back heavy cream each morning, and Dudley comes up with groceries every morning. But as far as I can remember, there is no other place than this. We are on a desert island, Luke said. I can picture any world but Hill House, Eleanor said. I can't picture any world but Hill House. Perhaps, Theodora said, we should make notches on a stick or pile pebbles in a heap, one each day, so we will know how long we have been marooned. How pleasant not to have any word from outside. Luke helped himself to an enormous heap of whipped cream. No letters, no newspapers. Anything might be happening. Unfortunately, the doctor said, and then stopped. I beg your pardon, he went on. I meant only to say that word will be reaching us from outside, and of course it is not unfortunate at all. Mrs. Montague, my wife, that is, will be here on Saturday. But when is Saturday? Luke asked. Delighted to see Mrs. Montague, of course. Give me a second. Sorry about that. Okay. I'm going to go back. Unfortunately, the doctor said, and then stopped. I beg your pardon, he went on. I meant only to say that word will be reaching us from outside. And of course, it is not unfortunate at all. Mrs. Montague, my wife, that is, will be here on Saturday. But when is Saturday? Luke asked. Delighted to see Mrs. Montague, of course. Day after tomorrow, the doctor thought. Yes, he said after a minute, I believe that the day after tomorrow is Saturday. We will know it is Saturday, of course, he told them with a little twinkle, because Mrs. Montague will be here. I hope she is not holding high hopes of things going bump in the night, Theodora said. Hill House has fallen short of its original promise, I think. Or perhaps Mrs. Montague will be greeted with a volley of psychic experiences. Mrs. Montague, the doctor said, will be perfectly ready to receive them. I wonder, Theodora said to Eleanor as they left the lunch table under Mrs. Dudley's watchful eye, Why everything has been so quiet. I think this waiting is nerve-wracking, almost worse than having something happen. It's not us doing the waiting, Eleanor said. It's the house. I think it's biding its time. Waiting until we feel secure, maybe, and then it will pounce. I wonder how long it can wait. Eleanor shivered and started up the great staircase. I'm almost tempted to write a letter to my sister. Having a perfectly splendid time here in jolly old Hill House. You really must plan to bring the whole family next summer, Theodora went on. We sleep under blankets every night. The air is so bracing, particularly in the upstairs hall. You go around all the time just glad to be alive. There's something going on every minute. Civilization seems so far away. Eleanor laughed. She was ahead of Theodora at the top of the stairs. The dark hallway was a little lightened this afternoon. Because they had left the nursery door open and the sunlight came through the windows by the tower and touched the doctor's measuring tape and chalk on the floor. The light reflected from the stained glass window on the stair landing and made shattered fragments of blue and orange and green. Thank you. I just got dinner. And made shattered fragments of blue and orange and green on the dark wood of the hall. I'm going to sleep, she said. I've never been so lazy in my life. I'm going to lie in my bed and dream about streetcars, Theodora said. It had become Eleanor's habit to hesitate in the doorway of her room, glancing around quickly before she went inside. She told herself that this was because the room was so exceedingly blue and always took a moment to get used to. When she came inside, she went across to the open window, which she always found closed. Today, she was halfway across the room before she heard Theodora's door slam back, and Theodora's smothered Eleanor. Moving quickly, Eleanor ran into the hall into Theodora's doorway, to stop, aghast, looking over Theodora's shoulder. What is it? She whispered. What does it look like? Theodora's voice rose crazily. What does it look like, you fool? And I won't forgive her that, either. Eleanor thought concretely through her bewilderment. It looks like paint, she said hesitantly, except the smell is awful. It's blood, Theodora said with finality. She clung to the door, swaying as the door moved, staring. Blood, she said, all over. Do you see it? Of course I see it, and it's not all over. Stop making such a fuss. Although, she thought conscientiously, Theodora was making very little of a fuss, actually. One of these times, she thought, one of us is going to put her head back and really howl, and I hope it won't be me because I'm trying to guard against it. It will be Theodora who... And then, cold, she asked, is that more writing on the wall? And heard Theodora's wild laugh and thought, maybe it will be me after all, and I can't afford to. I must be steady. And she closed her eyes and found herself saying silently, oh, stay and hear, your true love's coming, that can sing both high and low. Trip no further, pretty sweeting, journeys end in lovers' meeting. Yes, indeed, dear, Theodora said. I don't know how you managed it. Every wise man's son doth know. Be sensible, Eleanor said. Call Luke and the doctor. Why? Theodora asked. Wasn't it to be just a little private surprise for me, a secret just for the two of us? Then, pulling away from Eleanor, who tried to hold her from going farther into the room, she ran to the great wardrobe and threw open the door and cruelly began to cry. My clothes, she said, my clothes. Steadily, Eleanor turned and went to the top of the stairs. Luke, she called, leaning over the banisters. Doctor. Her voice was not loud, and she had tried to keep it level, but she heard the doctor's book drop to the floor and then the pounding of feet as he and Luke ran for the stairs. She watched them, seeing their apprehensive faces, wondering at the uneasiness which lay so close below the surface in all of them, so that each of them seemed always waiting for a cry for help from one of the others. Intelligence and understanding are really no protection at all, she thought. It's Theo, she said as they came to the top of the stairs. She's hysterical. Something has gotten red paint in her room, and she's cried over her clothes. She's crying over her clothes. Now I could not have put more fairly than that, she thought, turning to follow them. Could I have put it more fairly than that? She asked herself, and found that she was smiling. Theodora was still sobbing wildly in her room and kicking at the wardrobe door, in a tantrum that might have been laughable if she had not been holding her yellow shirt, matted and stained. Her other clothes had been torn from the hangers and lay trampled and disordered on the wardrobe floor, all of them smeared and reddened. "What is it?" Luke asked the doctor, and the doctor, shaking his head, said, "I would swear that it was blood, and yet to get so much blood one would almost have to," and then was abruptly quiet. All of them stood in silence for a moment and looked at "Help Eleanor come home, Eleanor," written in shaky red letters on the wallpaper over Theodora's bed. "This time I am ready," Eleanor told herself and said, "You'd better get her out of here. Bring her into my room." "My clothes are ruined," Theodora said to the doctor. "Do you see my clothes?" The smell was atrocious, and the writing on the wall had dripped and splattered. There was a line of drops from the wall to the wardrobe, perhaps what had first turned Theodora's attention that way, and a great irregular stain on the green rug. "It's disgusting," Eleanor said. "Please get Theo into my room." Luke and the doctor between them persuaded Theodora through the bathroom and into Eleanor's room, and Eleanor, looking at the red paint, "It must be paint," she told herself. "It's simply got to be paint. What else could it be?" Said aloud, "But why?" and stared up at the writing on the wall. "Here lies one," she thought gracefully, "whose name was writ in blood. Is it possible that I am not quite coherent at this moment?" "Is she all right?" she asked, turning as the doctor came back into the room. "She will be in a few minutes. We'll have to move her in with you for a while, I should think. I can't imagine her wanting to sleep in here again." The doctor smiled a little wanly. "It will be a long time, I think, before she opens another door by herself. I suppose she'll have to wear my clothes." "I suppose she will, if you don't mind." The doctor looked at her curiously. "This message troubles you less than the other?" "It's too silly," Eleanor said, trying to understand her own feelings. "I've been standing here looking at it and just wondering why. I mean, it's like a joke that didn't come off. I was supposed to be much more frightened than this, I think. And I'm not, because it's simply too horrible to be real. And I keep remembering Theo putting red polish." She giggled, and the doctor looked at her sharply, but she went on. "It might as well be paint, don't you see?" "I can't stop talking," she thought. "What do I have to explain all this?" "Maybe I can't take it seriously," she said, after the sight of Theo screaming over her poor clothes and accusing me of writing my name all over her wall. "Maybe I'm getting used to her blaming me for everything." "Nobody's blaming you for anything," the doctor said, and Eleanor felt that she had been reproved. "I hope my clothes will be good enough for her," she said tartly. The doctor turned, looking around the room. He touched one finger gingerly to the letters on the wall and moved Theodora's yellow shirt with his foot. "Later," he said absently. "Tomorrow, perhaps." He glanced at Eleanor and smiled. "I can make an exact sketch of this," he said. "I can help you," Eleanor said. "It makes me sick, but it doesn't frighten me." "Yes," the doctor said. "I think we'd better close up the room for now. However, we don't want Theodora blundering in here again. Then later, at my leisure, I can study it. Also," he said with a flash of amusement, "I would not like to have Mrs. Dudley coming in here to straighten up." Eleanor watched silently while he locked the hall door from inside the room, and then they went through the bathroom and he locked the connecting door into Theodora's green room. "I'll see about moving in another bed," he said, and then, with some awkwardness, "You've kept your head well, Eleanor. It's a help to me." "I told you, it makes me sick, but it doesn't frighten me," she said, pleased, and turned to Theodora. Theodora was lying on Eleanor's bed, and Eleanor saw with a queasy turn that Theodora had gotten red on her hands, and it was rubbing off on Eleanor's pillow. "Look," she said harshly, coming over to Theodora. "You'll have to wear my clothes until you get new ones, or until we get the others cleaned." "Cleaned?" Theodora rolled convulsively on the bed and pressed her stained hands against her eyes. "Cleaned?" "For heaven's sake," Eleanor said, "let me wash you off." She thought, without trying to find a reason, that she had never felt such uncontrollable loathing for any person before, and she went into the bathroom and soaked a towel and came back to scrub roughly at Theodora's hands and face. "You're filthy with the stuff," she said, hating to touch Theodora. Suddenly, Theodora smiled at her. "I don't really think you did it," she said, and Eleanor turned to see that Luke was behind her, looking down at them. "What a fool I am," Theodora said to him, and Luke laughed. "You will have to delight in Nell's red sweater," he said. "She is wicked," Eleanor thought, "beastly and soiled and dirty." She took the towel into the bathroom and left it to soak in cold water. When she came out, Luke was saying, "Another bed in here. You girls are going to share a room from now on." "Share a room and share our clothes," Theodora said. "We're going to be practically twins." "Cousins," Eleanor said, but no one heard her. Catty, catty bitches. I guess it could be like the house psychologically messing with them. That's why they're being catty. Even though women are catty by nature. Well, Dom, I think chess is brought up a lot in this book just because of the times that they're in. I feel chess was probably a lot more popular than it is now. Not that it's unpopular, but the digital age that we're in. Makes chess less popular in like the attention spans of kids. It doesn't work. If only I drink at home. I really only drink at like meetups socially, I guess. Or like work stuff too. Yeah, that was my first thought too. I was just like, so now you're sending Luke off alone? Cool. Cool, bro. Dude, seriously, that is how I'm feeling. Well, actually, you know what? I don't mind the doctor and Luke. But good Lord, go figure. I don't like women, so of course I want the females to, Minecraft. I hope you don't mind me eating my cheese curds. This is basically our Thursday ritual. My brother orders Buffalo Wild Wings while I stream. See, and I do think that too, Mudcrab. But I also think that of people who play chess, that they think that of themselves. Maybe because I hate chess because I suck at it. But I haven't played it enough to actually like be good at it. I get really frustrated. You may not know it, but I'm somewhat competitive by nature. So if I'm not understanding something and I'm playing against my brother and I'm losing a lot, I get really, 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 really frustrated. I'm actually like that with video games too. It's why I don't really do co-op type stuff. Like growing up playing video games, it was RPGs, JRPGs, solo gaming. Because I didn't want to rely on other people, and I didn't want other people to rely on me because I need to focus and learn on my own to get better. And if I'm doing it with other people, then them being better than me, I feel like I'm holding them back. Yeah, that's me. In a nutshell. What is Mr. Dudley doing the whole time? Just hanging around the gate. I believe so, but I think that's essentially his job. Maybe it's the Dudleys that screw with people. Like Mrs. Dudley acts all creepy and is just very like spot on. Exactly at 10 o'clock, I removed the dishes. And then at night, Mr. Dudley screws everything up, or like when they're not around. Or even like during the day, maybe Mrs. Dudley, when she knows that they're not around, is the one screwing with them. It's possible. They could be just like a creepy couple that's been there throughout the ages. They're vampires. Though it is more interesting than the first half of the book, it's still rather dull. And this is actually the first time that I've read a horror book. And I've never just really had the inclination to read a horror because I never thought that like reading it would scare me, like watching it would. That's the case with this one. It's really not all that scary as I'm reading it. Maybe because you guys are listening to it, maybe it is for you, but I doubt it. That's hilarious. I hate Shakespeare. Oh, Lord. So, of course, I'm annoyed at this stupid Journey's End Lovers Meeting crap. And of course, it's Shakespeare. Really quickly, I'm going to go get some more tea. I will be right back. Thanks for hanging out, guys. You're awesome. All right, I'm back. Thank you. Sorry. Probably should have said something when I came back on camera. Whatever. Not sure if there's real meaning behind it or the author of Hill House is trying to seem clever. You know, that look at me, I can quote Shakespeare. I'm so clever. I wouldn't put it past her being a woman. Can you tell I don't like women? I might have a poor opinion. I'm actually glad that like the chapters are a bit longer, starting to get a bit longer. Of course, I started saying that and I realized that it's only like 3 pages for the next one. C'est la vie. Part 5, Chapter 3. It was the custom rigidly adhered to, Luke said, turning the brandy in his glass, for the public executioner before a quartering to outline his knife strokes in chalk upon the belly of his victim. For fear of a slip, you understand. I would like to hit her with a stick, Eleanor thought, looking down on Theodora's head beside her chair. I would like to batter her with rocks. An exquisite refinement, exquisite, because of course the chalk strokes would have been almost unbearable, excruciating, if the victim were ticklish. I hate her, Eleanor thought. She sickens me. She's all washed and clean and wearing my red sweater. When the death was by hanging in chains, however, the executioner, Nell, Theodora looked up at her and smiled. I really am sorry, you know, she said. I would like to watch her dying, Eleanor thought, and smiled back and said, don't be silly. Among the Sufis, S-U-F-I-S, Sufis? I don't know who that is. But among them, there's a teaching that the universe has never been created and consequently cannot be destroyed. I have spent the afternoon, Luke announced gravely, browsing in our little library. The doctor sighed. No chess tonight, I think, he said to Luke, and Luke nodded. It has been an exhausting day, the doctor said, and I think you ladies should retire early. Not until I am well dulled with brandy, Theodora said firmly. Fear, the doctor said, is the relinquishment of logic, the willing relinquishing of reasonable patterns. We yield to it or we fight it, but we cannot meet it halfway. I was wondering earlier, Eleanor said, feeling she had somehow an apology to make to all of them. I thought I was altogether calm, and yet now I know I was terribly afraid. She frowned, puzzled, and they waited for her to go on. When I am afraid, I can see perfectly the sensible, beautiful, not afraid side of the world. I can see chairs and tables and windows staying the same, not affected in the least. And I can see things like the careful woven texture of the carpet, not even moving. But when I am afraid, I no longer exist in any relation to these things. I suppose because things are not afraid. I think we are only afraid of ourselves, the doctor said slowly. No, Luke said, of seeing ourselves clearly and without disguise. Of knowing what we really want, Theodora said. She pressed her cheek against Eleanor's hand, and Eleanor, hating the touch of her, took her hand away quickly. I am always afraid of being alone, Eleanor said, and wondered, am I talking like this? Am I saying something I will regret bitterly tomorrow? Am I making more guilt for myself? Those letters spelled out my name, and none of you know what that feels like. It's so familiar. And she gestured to them, almost in appeal. Try to see, she said. It's my own dear name, and it belongs to me. And something is using it, and writing it, and calling me with it. And my own name, she stopped and said, looking from one of them to another, even down onto Theodora's face, looking up at her. Look, there's only one of me, and it's all I've got. I hate seeing myself dissolve and slip and separate so that I'm living in one half, my mind, and I see the other half of me helpless and frantic and driven, and I can't stop it. But I know I'm not really going to be hurt, and yet time is so long, and even a second goes on, and I could stand any of it if I could only surrender. Surrender, said the doctor sharply. And Eleanor stared. Surrender? Luke repeated. I don't know, Eleanor said, perplexed. I was just talking along, she told herself. I was saying something. What was I just saying? She has done this before, Luke said to the doctor. I know, said the doctor gravely, and Eleanor could feel them all looking at her. I'm sorry, she said. Did I make a fool of myself? It's probably because I'm tired. Not at all, the doctor said, still grave. Drink your brandy. Brandy? And Eleanor looked down, realizing that she held a brandy glass. What did I say? She asked them. Theodora chuckled. Drink, she said. You need it, my Nell. Obediently, Eleanor sipped at her brandy, feeling clearly its sharp burn, and then said to the doctor, I must have said something silly from the way you're all staring at me. The doctor laughed. Stop trying to be the center of attention. Vanity, Luke said serenely. Have to be in the limelight, Theodora said, and they smiled fondly, all looking at Eleanor. That's interesting. I mean, by interesting, I mean kind of annoying. Did I just really just say, I mean? All of the signs are pointing toward psychological thriller, not horror. Should this really be in the genre of horror, guys? Yeah, you want food? This is a very distracted screen, guys. Sorry. I'm gonna go feed my cat. I'll be right back. I almost went to put my headphones on. Boy, I did not need to do that. All right. What does journeys end in lovers meeting mean? Lovers are more like twin souls separated by birth and who relentlessly seek their counterpart all their life. And when they meet, well, that's when their journey comes to an end. I guess. Sounds like a bunch of fluff and frou-frou crap to me. Let's see. Oh, mistress mine, where are you roaming? Oh, stay in here. Your true love's coming. That can sing both high and low. Oh, goddess, you're trying to get me into it, but my friend, it ain't my thing. I recognize that from the book, at least. I appreciate you enlightening us, though. Promise. Sufi. That's what I'm going to call them. Seems to be an Arabic term that is involved in Islamic literature, apparently. Under correction. Hey. Pardon me. Hey, Real Wade Nation Gaming Clips. Oh, look, I can say your name, unlike anyone else, like Dermy and Adam, Soldier Spirit. They always seem to stumble. Thanks for coming by, Wade. Appreciate it. And thank you for your kind word. I'm not always sweet, but I appreciate the sentiment. I think the house is screwing with her head. The ghost, poltergeist, whatever it is that the house is, I think is definitely like messing with her. It's possible that it's like a combination of a psychological thriller as well as a horror, like where it is in her head, but not because she's like in a mental institute or anything like that. It's more just she's being made to be crazy by the house. Like she was already on the precipice of it, and the house has like pushed her over the edge, or is pushing her over the edge in the process of. That's very possible. Like I still go back to, I don't know if it was the part 1 or part 2 where it had to be part 1, I think. Doesn't matter. She goes to that diner and sees the little girl, and she wants, like, the little girl wants her milk cup, or no, like whatever. There's stars in the bottom of her cup. So she later in the book, after that experience, Eleanor was talking and saying, like, talking about how she has a cup from her childhood that had stars in it. So now I'm wondering, like, did that actually happen, or was that a memory from her childhood? Like, see how she might be just on that edge? It's my thoughts on it, at least. It's very weird. Yeah. I don't know if it was in the beginning of, at some point in the chapter, yes. Like she's going crazy. Like the first thought, I would like to hit her with a stick, because like Luke was talking about customs for executions. So it was a custom rigidly adhered to for the public executioner before a quartering to outline his knife strokes in chalk upon the belly of his victim. Okay. And yeah, she was like, I would like to hit her with a stick. I would like to batter her with rocks. This is all, of course, in Minecraft YouTube. Not that you care about me, but I'm not the one saying these things. And she says, I thinks I hate her. She sickens me. She is all washed and clean and wearing my red sweater. It wouldn't surprise me if she like attempts to kill Theodora in Minecraft. And then she says, I would like to watch her dying. Not gonna lie, I don't like being in Eleanor's head. She's driving me crazy. All of this. Another quick chapter coming up, so I'm gonna jump into it. I don't need this up here though. Actually, what is worse, being killed in Minecraft or teabagged in Call of Duty? I've never played either of them, so I cannot answer, but chat, have at it. Part 5, Chapter 4. Sitting up in the two beds beside each other, Eleanor and Theodora reached out between and held hands tight. The room was brutally cold and thickly dark. From the room next door, the room which until that morning had been Theodora's, came the steady, low sound of a voice babbling. Too low for words to be understood, too steady for disbelief. Holding hands so hard that each of them could feel the other's bones, Eleanor and Theodora listened, and the low, steady sound went on and on. The voice lifting sometimes for an emphasis on a mumbled word, falling sometimes to a breath, going on and on. Then, without warning, there was a little laugh, the small gurgling laugh that broke through the babbling and rose as it laughed, on, up, and up the scale, and then broke off suddenly in a little painful gasp, and the voice went on. Theodora's grasp loosened and tightened, and Eleanor, lulled for a minute by the sounds, started and looked across to where Theodora ought to be in the darkness, and then thought screamingly, "Why is it dark? Why is it dark?" She rolled and clutched Theodora's hand with both of hers and tried to speak and could not, and held on blindly and frozen, trying to stand her mind on its feet, trying to reason again. "We left the light on," she told herself, "so why is it dark?" "Theodora," she tried to whisper, and her mouth could not move. "Theodora," she tried to ask, "why is it dark?" And the voice went on, babbling, low and steady, a little liquid gloating sound. She thought she might be able to distinguish words if she lay perfectly still, and listened and heard the voice going on, never ceasing. And she hung desperately to Theodora's hand and felt an answering weight on her own hand. Then the little gurgling laugh came again, and the rising mad sound of it drowned out the voice, and then suddenly, absolute silence. Eleanor took a breath, wondering if she could speak now, and then she heard a little soft cry which broke her heart, a little infinitely sad cry, a little sweet moan of wild sadness. It is a child, she thought with disbelief. A child is crying somewhere, and then, upon that thought, came the wild shrieking voice she had never heard before, and yet knew she had heard always in her nightmares. "Go away!" it screamed. "Go away, don't hurt me!" And, after sobbing, "Please don't hurt me. Please let me go home." And then the little sad crying again. "I can't stand it," Eleanor thought concretely. "This is monstrous. This is cruel. They have been hurting a child, and I won't let anyone hurt a child." And the babbling went on, low and steady, on and on and on, the voice rising a little and falling a little, going on and on. Now, Eleanor thought, perceiving that she was lying sideways on the bed in the black darkness, holding with both hands to Theodora's hand, holding so tight she could feel the fine bones of Theodora's fingers. "Now I will not endure this. They think to scare me. Well, they have. I am scared, but more than that, I am a person. I am a human. I am a walking, reasoning, humorous human being, and I will take a lot from this lunatic, filthy house, but I will not go along with hurting a child. No, I will not. I will, by God, get my mouth to open right now, and I will yell. I will yell. Stop it, she shouted, and the lights were on the way. They were on the way they had left them, and Theodora was sitting up in bed, startled and disheveled. What? Theodora was saying. What now? What? God, Eleanor said, flinging herself out of bed and across the room to stand shuddering in a corner. God, whose hand was I holding? That's a little creepy. That's the end of part 5. Hey, we got some more action, guys. Now, was it a dream that she was even holding someone's hand? It was probably dark because her eyes were closed. So she was imagining everything. Maybe. Well, every minute we are alive is 1 minute closer to one's death, so technically we are all watching one die. That's valid. She wants to hit her with rocks. This is a reference to her childhood when they talked about rocks being thrown at her house. Well, it was more bricks were constantly falling. And her mom said that it was the neighbors. Like, I'm wondering if she was put, like, in a home or something after that situation where she was the only one that was saying that, like, the bricks continuously were falling, but it was actually people, like kids from the neighborhood or their neighbors or whatever, who were throwing rocks at the house, maybe? It's possible. Hey, what up, MSK? Hi. How's it going? What was the other thought that I had? Like, I think it was a dream too, dumb. But at the same time, was there also something in the room with them? Just holding her hand? Like, was the nightmare, dream, whatever it was, put into her head by something that was holding her hand? Oh, that's what it was. So I had a thought while I was reading. I'm wondering, maybe she is like, was she the abused child when she was younger? Like, did their mom, maybe her sister, like lock her in her room, abuse her, and that was like her manifesting her own childhood in this dream? Because it is saying, let Eleanor go home. Whatever the phrasing is on the words. Now I need to go find it because I'm me. Help Eleanor, come home, Eleanor. That was that one. Help Eleanor, come home. Okay. So the words the first time around were help Eleanor come home. But then the second time around, it was help Eleanor come home, Eleanor. So now I'm looking at it. See, this is why commas are important. Like, is it trying to say, help Eleanor, comma, come home? Like someone wants her to come home because they need help, not help Eleanor come home. But then the next time, help Eleanor come home, Eleanor. That's interesting. Probably not all that interesting to you, but it is to me. Mud crab, I've had dreams like that. You're absolutely holding something in your hand when you wake up and it fades to nothing. Yeah. I feel that way too, even though I don't. It's come to be known via the public that I apparently do not have a traditional inner monologue. And it bothers some people. So I can't really imagine things, like visualize things the way other people can. So I have dreams, but the moment I wake up, they kind of just disappear. And I can't even really bring, even if it's a vivid dream, like I can remember having a vivid dream, but once I wake up, it's gone. And I, even when I like try to think about it and I remember what happened in the dream, I'm not seeing it and I'm not hearing anything. Like when I think, even when I get songs stuck in my head, I know the tune, my brain knows the tune, but I'm not actually hearing it. And that baffles people. But I too have had dreams like that where I do feel like it was very, very real. And then I wake up and it's just like gone, but lingering. It's weird. See, that, like, is she stuck? Like, I don't know if I want to say in the house, because if her brother-in-law and sister are there, they'd have to go in the house to do those things. Or maybe she is, if you can hear the cat in the background or a noise in the background that sounds weird, it's the cat begging to go outside. But it's been raining all day. He likes to pretend like he's dying when he doesn't get his way. It's funny. No, that doesn't make him a bastard, Sam, if you're listening. Oh, yeah, we were talking about this on movie night. Something about your dream. Oh, my God, Dermy needs to get over it. He's talking about it when I'm not even there. I don't understand. This is like the freaking oatmeal cookies thing, just smaller. Freaking part of the internet. Hi, Colson. Well, we have been going for over an hour and a half, and part 5 is done. So don't justice for Dermy. I don't even know what he needs justice for, but he doesn't. So you start with me. That is it for the stream. I appreciate you guys all being here. Go follow me on the Twitters, the Instagrams, all those little places. Yeah, like, subscribe, put comments, tell me what you thought. I really appreciate you guys sticking with me for the stream, and everybody who might have been lurking, and everyone who's watching on the replay. You guys are awesome too. I appreciate you all. Have a good night. I have to end, Legatus. I'm not starting a whole new section, area. Part 6 is going to be long, I have a feeling. Might be wrong with that. Okay, I was wrong with that, but I'm still not going to read another 14 pages. 13 pages. I'm sorry. But thank you, everybody. You guys are awesome. I really, really, really appreciate it. You guys coming here every Thursday, hanging out with me. Yeah. So I will see you tomorrow for Ballbusters and then Beelzebub. There's not going to be Screaming into the Void on Saturday, though. So just those two things. I'll talk to you guys later. Have a good night. See ya.